Her own family called her nothing at the dinner table, brushing off her sacrifices like they meant less than a desk job. Until her dad's powerful boss stood up in front of everyone, looked her in the eyes, and called her Colonel Dane. What happens when the person they underestimated turns out to be the one holding the most respect in the room? Hit like, share and subscribe to follow this powerful journey of identity and redemption. Comment below where you're watching from. And make sure you watch until the very end. You won't want to miss how it all unfolds. The wind was warm that late summer evening as Juliette Dane pulled into the driveway of the house she grew up in. The white siding was clean, the grass still neatly trimmed, and the hydrangeas in bloom. Everything looked exactly the same. That was the problem. She sat in her car for a moment, engine off, fingers still curled around the steering wheel. Her uniform jacket lay neatly folded on the passenger seat, and her polished shoes caught the fading sun. She did not wear her medals. She never brought them here. Her phone buzzed once in her purse. She knew it would be Logan or her mother, probably checking if she was going to be late. She was not. She had driven over 300 miles to get here on time. That had to mean something. Juliette stepped out, smoothed her blouse, and grabbed the bottle of wine she had picked up as a peace offering. She had chosen it carefully. Not too fancy, not too cheap. Something that said, "I'm trying." Something that said, "I belong here too." The front door opened before she knocked. Her mother stood in the entryway, smiling too quickly. "Oh, sweetheart, you made it," she said, brushing her hands on her apron. Juliette stepped forward and hugged her, the scent of rosemary and baked chicken wrapped around them. Familiar, warm, still. She felt like an outsider stepping into a set that had been rehearsed without her. Inside, voices spilled from the dining room. Logan's laugh, rich and easy, echoed through the hall. Her father's lower voice responded with approval. Glasses clinked. Someone was telling a story. Juliette paused in the foyer, letting her eyes adjust to the golden light. Then she walked in. "There she is," Logan said, standing up from the table with open arms. He was broader than before, his smile even wider. His suit jacket hung on the back of the chair, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked like someone used to winning. Everyone else at the table smiled. Their mother beamed. Juliette forced herself to smile back as Logan wrapped her in a hug. Then her father stood slowly. His salt and pepper hair was still sharp, and his posture perfect, even in his cardigan. "Juliette," he said. She nodded. "Dad." That was it. No embrace, no compliment, no question about her trip. She placed the wine on the table and took the only empty seat left, between her mother and Aunt Diane. As the dinner continued, the conversation flowed around her like a current. Logan had just been promoted to a regional manager position at a top-tier tech firm. Her father could not stop bragging about it. He kept using words like strategic mind and natural leader. Juliette nodded politely and sipped her water. She had led 3 missions in the past 6 months. One of them required her to medevac a wounded sergeant while under fire. Another involved briefing international allies on classified operations. But none of that came up tonight. "So Juliette," Aunt Diane said, leaning in. "Are you still doing that thing with the military?" Juliette raised an eyebrow. "Yes, I am still an active duty officer. I was promoted recently." "Oh well, that's good, right?" she asked, eyes darting. "Yes, I am a colonel now." A pause, a blink. Her father cleared his throat. "Well, leadership in the army is a bit different from the corporate world," he said. "There are protocols, sure, but civilian leadership teaches real competition." Juliette looked down at her plate. The chicken was perfectly cooked. The vegetables, seasoned just right. It tasted like everything she remembered from childhood, but the bitterness in her mouth ruined the flavor. "I'd say commanding troops under pressure is its own form of competition," she replied quietly. Her Mother reached out and patted her hand, as if to say, "Let it go. Not tonight." Juliet did let it go. She always had, even after years of service. Even after missing holidays, funerals, and birthdays to serve her country. Her family never quite knew what to do with her title. They liked the idea of the military. They just did not like it attached to her. The conversation shifted again. Logan talked about quarterly goals and mentorship programs. Her father nodded along proudly. Juliet excused herself and stepped into the kitchen. She stood by the sink, back to the room, breathing slow. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she checked. It dialed unknown caller. She frowned and answered. "Colonel Dane?" "Colonel," came a crisp voice. "I apologize for the late notice. The secretary requested that you lead tomorrow's presentation at Belridge Defense. They need someone with your experience and clarity." Juliet straightened. "Understood, sir. I will be ready. One more thing. You will be meeting with the head of the Civilian Research Board and their executive director. The firm has direct ties to long-standing leadership. Do not be surprised if you recognize a few names." She ended the call, heart beating faster. Belridge Defense. That was her father's firm. He had worked there for over 30 years. She returned to the table, quiet again. Logan had just made a joke about startup culture, and everyone was laughing. She smiled politely. The irony wrapped around her like armor. Tomorrow, she would walk into a room full of executives. Her uniform would be pressed, her voice steady. Her father's boss would be there. The same man who once told her she was just chasing thralls. She wondered what he would say when she entered and he had to address her by rank. The dinner wound down slowly. Dishes clinked, wine glasses emptied, dessert was served. Juliet spoke. Little listened much. Her father made one last toast to Logan's future. Everyone clapped. Juliet looked around the table. She was here, physically, but still out of place. They saw her as a daughter, a sister, a visitor. Never as a colonel. Never as someone who had earned her own authority. She excused herself after coffee. Said her goodbyes, accepted hugs and lukewarm praise. Her father simply nodded. As she stepped back into her car, moonlight catching the edges of the windshield. She reached for her uniform. She laid it gently across her lap, fingers brushing over the pins and badges. Tomorrow, she thought. They will see, and for the first time in a long while, she smiled. The morning sun filtered softly through Juliet's hotel window, casting a pale glow across the simple room. She had barely slept. Her mind kept returning to the dining table, to the sound of Logan's laughter and her father's empty silence. They had celebrated without her. They had smiled and clapped and passed the wine as if her entire life of service was no more than a forgotten line in a long, dull story. She rose early, as always. Discipline ran through her like breath. By 6 o'clock, she was already lacing her boots, her uniform pristine. Each fold and crease a silent reminder of the years it took to reach this moment. Her name tag gleamed. The silver eagle insignia on her shoulders was polished to perfection. She stood before the mirror, staring not at her reflection but through it. Behind the steady eyes and proud stance was a girl who once begged her father to attend her office of commissioning. He never came. Said work would not allow it. Said it was not a big deal. That was almost a decade ago. He had attended every single ceremony of Logan's career, even the virtual ones. Juliet inhaled slowly. That pain would not walk into the boardroom with her today. At exactly 7:30, she left the hotel and stepped into the early light. Her car ride to Belridge Defense was quiet. No music, no distraction. She needed her mind to be clear. The building loomed ahead, tall and elegant in steel and glass. Security checked her credentials and directed her to the executive floor. As she entered the elevator, she pressed the top button and watched the numbers rise, heart beating steady, but fast. She had only been here once before, as a teenager. Her father had taken her and Logan on a tour. He had shaken hands with everyone, introduced Logan proudly to every director and engineer. Juliet was barely noticed. When she asked a question about the military contracts, her father hushed her now. She was returning through the same doors, but this time not as a daughter, not as a spectator, as the lead voice in a critical national defense briefing. When the elevator doors opened, a receptionist stood waiting. "Colonel Dane?" the woman asked with a polite smile. Juliet nodded. "Yes, they're ready for you. This way, please." The woman led her through a long corridor with tall windows and quiet carpets. At the end stood a glass conference room where several men and women were already seated. She recognized none of them until one tall man rose from his chair. It was Gerald Whitmore, the executive director of Belridge. Her father had admired him for years, spoke of him with reverence. Whitmore stepped forward, his sharp eyes focused on her. Then he smiled. "Colonel Dane," he said with clear respect. "Welcome. We've been looking forward to your presentation." Juliet extended her hand. "Thank you, sir." He shook it firmly. "I hear you've recently returned from overseas." "Yes," she said. "Joint operations in Northern Europe and Central Command. I've compiled the latest assessments and tactical summaries relevant to your department's systems integration proposal." Whitmore nodded with approval. "Excellent. Let's begin." She moved to the front of the room as the projector came to life. Charts, photographs, and secure statistics appeared behind her. She spoke calmly, deliberately. Her voice never faltered. She briefed them on emerging threats, on vulnerabilities in the current missile defense coordination, on the need for faster data exchange between allied units. Her eyes met each executive directly. Not once did she stumble. They asked sharp questions. She answered each with precision as she closed the final slide. Juliet turned toward the table and clasped her hands behind her back. "We are no longer preparing for yesterday's warfare. Our adversaries are adapting faster than we are investing. If we do not move with urgency, our tactical superiority will erode. I recommend the immediate approval of the real-time comms integration with your Raptor Grid interface. It will save lives, possibly thousands." The room was quiet. Then Whitmore leaned forward, hands folded. "Well said, Colonel," he said. "Your clarity and direction are exactly what this board needs. You've earned the full respect of this office." Another man across the table spoke. "Is she the Colonel Dane from Fort Harrow?" Whitmore smiled. "Yes, and she's the same Colonel Dane your father speaks about often." Juliet blinked. "Wait," the older man said, glancing at the tablet in front of him. "Your father is Douglas Dane." "Yes," Juliet said, slowly. Whitmore chuckled, not unkindly. "He never mentioned you by name. Always talked about his son working at a tech firm. Said his daughter was in the army. Never said she was a decorated colonel." Juliet straightened. He may not have seen it as relevant. Whitmore looked at her with a curious expression. Then he nodded, almost to himself. "Well, Colonel," he said, "you were more than relevant today. You were essential. We will move forward with your recommendation." The meeting ended with handshakes and quiet admiration. Juliet gathered her notes and stepped out into the hallway with the calm of someone who had just changed the direction of a multi-million-dollar program. She did not need applause. This was not about pride. This was about truth, and now the truth could no longer be ignored. As she reached the elevator, her phone buzzed. A message from her father. "I heard you were at Belridge today. Call me when you have a minute." She stared at the screen for a long moment. She stepped into the elevator. Without replying, not yet. The air felt different when Juliet stepped out of the building. The morning haze had lifted, and the city shimmered with a quiet brightness. She walked slowly across the pavement, feeling each step with unusual clarity. Her phone sat heavy in her hand, her father's message still unanswered. She slid into the driver's seat and exhaled. Then, without starting the car, she leaned back and closed her eyes. They had listened to her. They had respected her. And not because she had demanded it, not because she had thrown her rank in their faces, but because they saw her work. They heard her speak and knew she belonged in that room. And that room happened to be the one her father had called sacred for as long as she could remember, for the first time in years. She did not question her place. She did not have to shrink herself to fit around others' expectations. She had stood tall in the very building that once reminded her she was invisible. She had turned the silence of her childhood into a voice they could not ignore. The car finally hummed to life. She drove toward her hotel, not thinking about the route. Her mind had already begun to wander toward the next step. She needed time, not to celebrate, but to sit with the truth of what had shifted. She checked into the front desk and rode the elevator to her floor. The hallway was quiet, the walls lined with soft yellow wallpaper and forgettable paintings. She unlocked the door and stepped into the stillness. Then her phone rang again. This time, she picked it up. "Hello," she said. There was a pause before the voice answered. "Juliet," her father said. "I didn't expect you to be at Belridge this morning." She said nothing. "I had a call from Whitmore about an hour ago," he continued. "He said you led the presentation." She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the far wall. "I did." "I wish I had known," he said. Voice lowered now. "I would have been there," she almost laughed. "Would you? Or would you have told me it was not the right place for someone like me?" "That's not fair," Juliet clenched her jaw. "What's not fair is the way you look at Logan like he's a prince and look at me like I wandered into someone else's kingdom." Her father sighed. "It's not about that. I've always wanted stability for you, safety." "I didn't ask for safety," she replied. "I asked for respect." There was silence on the line. Then, after a moment, he said, "Whitmore called you Colonel Dane. He said you took control of the entire meeting." Juliet nodded, even though he could not see it. "Because I did. I didn't know you'd come this far." She let that settle between them. Then she said, "You never asked." Another pause. "You're right. I didn't." The honesty of that admission softened something inside her, but she did not respond. "I saw Logan this morning," he added. "He's confused." "I imagine he would be," Juliet said. "He's used to being the one we talk about, the one we brag about." "I've never needed you to brag about me. I just wanted you to see me." Her father's voice was quieter now. "I see you, Juliet." She closed her eyes. "I'm proud of you," he said. She waited. She had waited her whole life to hear that. And now that the words had arrived, she did not know what to do with them. "Thank you," she said softly. He cleared his throat. "We're having dinner again tonight. Just the four of us. Your mother, Logan, me. You should come." Juliet did not answer right away. Her heart was still wrapped in the memory of last night, of the dull ache of being invisible. "It'll be different," he said. "You can't change everything in one day," she replied. "I'm not asking to change everything. I'm asking for a chance to start." She sighed. "I'll think about it." When she hung up, she sat still for a long time. Then she arose, pulled the curtain aside, and stared out at the city. So many lights, so many lives moving in different directions. For once, she did not feel like she was chasing something. She felt like someone was finally walking toward her. By late afternoon, she found herself standing in front of her childhood home again. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows on the lawn. She walked up the path slowly, her uniform replaced by jeans and a soft green sweater. Still herself, but without the armor. Her mother opened the door. "Come in, darling," she said. "I'm glad you came." Juliet stepped inside. The house smelled like stew and warm bread. It felt familiar, safe, almost, but not quite. Logan stood in the living room, hands in his pockets. He gave her a sheepish smile. "Hey, hi," she replied. "You were at Belridge today." She nodded. "They said you were incredible. I was prepared." He scratched his neck. "I had no idea. I mean, Colonel." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that hard to believe?" "No, just surprising. I thought I was the one making headlines." Juliet walked past him into the kitchen. That's the thing about headlines. They don't always tell the whole story. Dinner was quieter than the night before. No toasts, no speeches, just food, shared in slow bites and careful glances. Her father broke the silence first. "I spoke to Whitmore again. He said the project will begin immediately. He credits you with getting it through the board." Juliet simply nodded. Her mother smiled. "We're proud of you, sweetheart." Juliet met her father's eyes. "I know I haven't shown it," he said, "but I do see what you've done, and I'm sorry it took me this long to say so." For a moment, everything was still. Then, Juliet said, "I didn't do it for you. I did it because it mattered, but I'm glad you finally saw it." That night, when she returned to the hotel, she did not feel empty. She did not feel small. She felt calm. The kind of calm that comes after a storm has passed. When the air is washed clean and the light feels new. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She was not just Logan's sister. Not just Douglas Dane's daughter. Not just a name on a family photo. She was Colonel Juliet Dane. And the world, at last, had said her name out loud. The following morning dawned with a quiet light. Juliet sat near the window of the hotel lounge, sipping a bitter black coffee. She had always liked mornings. They were quiet, predictable. And today, they gave her space to think. The dining room. The night before had been a strange one. Not tense, not warm. Just unfamiliar. Her father had apologized, yes. Her mother had smiled. Logan had tried. But underneath it all sat the years of silence, the many conversations that had never been had. A single dinner could not erase those. Still, something had changed. She could feel it in the way her father spoke, in the way her brother watched her, not with competition, but with the slow bloom of realization. Maybe even respect. As she set down her coffee cup, her phone buzzed. This time, it was a number she knew. "Colonel Dane," she said, answering. "Juliet," came Whitmore's voice. "Good morning. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all, sir. I wanted to thank you again for your presentation. The board is moving quickly. You've pushed this process forward in ways we haven't seen in years." She smiled faintly. "It was my honor. There's one more thing. This might sound personal, but I thought you should hear it from me." Juliet sat straighter. "Go ahead." "I ran into your father in the executive lounge this morning. He had a copy of the initial reports. He was showing them to one of the other directors." Juliet blinked. "He was showing my report. He didn't say much," Whitmore added. "But the way he held it, there was pride there. The quiet kind. The kind that's been waiting a long time to surface." Her throat tightened. She looked out the window, at the moving traffic, at the soft flicker of life below. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. After she hung up, Juliet stayed by the window. For a long time, she had not expected any of this. She had wanted to be seen, not celebrated, not paraded, just seen. And maybe, finally, she had been later that day. She walked through the park near her hotel. The sky above was cloudless, and the breeze was gentle. Children played near the fountain, and an old man tossed crumbs to birds. The world moved on. Unaware of the small victory she carried within her, she sat on a bench and called her old friend from the base. "Liz," she said when the line picked up. "Well, if it isn't the fearless Colonel," Liz said. "How's the family chaos?" Juliet laughed softly. More silent confusion than chaos. but close enough. Did they finally realize you're kind of a big deal? I think they're starting to. Liz was quiet for a moment. You okay? Juliet nodded, even though Liz could not see her. I think I am. She paused, then added, it's strange. I've stood on tarmacs waiting for evac, been briefed on enemy movements hours before sunrise, led soldiers through fire. But sitting at that dinner table felt like the most complicated battlefield I've ever faced. Liz laughed. Because it's personal. You can command soldiers, but you can't command love. Juliet's smile faded a little. No, you can't. But maybe you can earn it back, bit by bit. That night, she received another message, from her mother this time. Dinner again tomorrow. Logan says he wants to hear more about your missions. Hope you can come. She stared at the message, then typed her reply. I'll be there. The next day brought a new kind of energy. Juliet returned to Belridge to finalize the contract details. This time, she was not just leading a briefing. She was joining the executive advisory team for the integration project, a temporary role, but a vital one. She would work closely with engineers, contractors, and civilian liaisons to ensure the system operated with military precision at the roundtable meeting. One of the directors leaned toward her. Colonel, he said, adjusting his glasses. You wouldn't happen to be related to Douglas Dane, would you? She smiled slightly. I would. The man chuckled. Small world. I've worked with him for 15 years. He's a numbers guy. Brilliant, but quiet. Rarely talks about family. Except that son of his, Logan, always mentions Logan. Juliet tilted her head. And now, well, he said, after yesterday, he mentioned you. The rest of the meeting blurred in comparison. Juliet left the boardroom not with pride, but with a strange lightness in her chest. She did not need the validation anymore. But now that it had come, it settled something deep inside her. That evening, she drove back to the house. She parked beside Logan's car, stepped out, and walked toward the porch. Her mother opened the door and hugged her tightly. I made your favorite tonight, she said. Chicken marsala. Juliet smiled. Thank you. Inside the house felt warmer. The lights seemed softer, the air less heavy. Logan greeted her with a quiet nod and a small grin. Colonel, he said. Juliet raised an eyebrow. You practicing, trying it on? Still feels strange. She chuckled. You'll get used to it. At the table, her father was already seated. He looked up and gave a single nod. I read your full report, he said. Impressive work. Whitmore's been talking about it all day. Glad it helped, Juliet replied. There was a pause. Then he said, you know, they're lucky to have you. The project, the military, all of them. Her mother smiled softly at Juliet. Logan leaned in. So tell me, what's the hardest part of commanding a base? Juliet blinked. Honestly, yeah. She took a slow breath. Making decisions when the cost is real. Not just numbers or delays. Real lives, real consequences. And living with those choices afterward. Logan nodded, eyes thoughtful. Sounds like leadership with actual weight. It is. The rest of the evening flowed more naturally. Logan asked questions about her deployments. Her mother wanted to see photos. Even her father asked her thoughts on civilian-military tech partnerships. By the end of the meal, the silence had become something different. Not tense, not bitter, just full of possibility as Juliet left that night. Her father walked her to the door. I was wrong about a lot of things, he said. She turned to face him. I thought I knew what success looked like, he continued. But you've shown me I was only seeing a fraction of the picture. Juliet looked into his eyes and saw something she had not seen since she was a girl. Not authority, not control, but humility. Thank you, she said. And this time, she meant it. Juliet's hotel room felt smaller than before. Not because it had changed, but because her world was expanding again. The walls pressed close, as if they no longer contained who she had become since arriving back home. The quiet, the clean sheets. The stillness, none of it matched the storm now moving inside her. She sat on the bed, a manila folder open beside her. Inside were the outlines of her next deployment, tentatively scheduled for early fall. Another command post. Another continent. Another chapter of duty. It was exactly what she had worked for. The kind of assignment given only to trusted leaders. A chance to oversee an international coalition task force. But something inside her hesitated. She closed the folder and looked at her phone. No new messages. No missed calls. Just her reflection in the dark screen, staring back. Unreadable, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Logan standing there, holding 2 coffees and wearing a hopeful expression. "I figured you might still like it black," he said. She stepped aside to let him in. "Still do." He handed her the coffee and looked around the room like it held clues to a secret. Then he sat in the armchair by the window. "So," he began, "Dad told me about the advisory role Belridge offered you." Juliet nodded. "It's short term. Just until the integration is complete." "They're lucky," he said, then paused. "But that's not the only offer on the table, right?" She raised an eyebrow. "Come on," Logan said with a smirk. "You think I don't know how this works? I saw the way Whitmore looked at you. And I know how much pull he has." Juliet gave a half smile. "You're not wrong." He asked if I've considered moving into civilian leadership. Logan leaned forward. "And have you?" She took a sip of her coffee, then said, "That's the question, isn't it?" Logan looked at her with a strange softness in his eyes. "I've spent most of my life thinking I was the one leading the charge in this family. But seeing you at Belridge, it made me realize I was just running the race I was handed." She tilted her head. "And now I'm starting to wonder if I've been following the wrong map." Juliet smiled gently. "It takes time to find your own." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken years resting gently between them. Then Logan said, "If you do stay, if you take something here, I think it would be good. For all of us." She looked away, her thoughts swirling like wind through bare branches. "I don't know if I'm ready to take off the uniform." "You wouldn't have to," Logan said. "You'd just be wearing it somewhere new." That evening, Juliet returned to her parents' house. Another dinner. Another attempt at connection. Her mother had made pot roast. Her father greeted her with a nod that carried more ease than before. Midway through the meal, her father cleared his throat. "I got a call from Whitmore this afternoon," he said. Juliet looked up. "He told me about the offer he made you." She said nothing. "He said you turned it down, at least for now." She nodded. "I haven't made any decisions yet." Her father leaned back. "I told him I understood." That surprised her. "I know what it feels like to stand at a crossroads," he continued. "When I first joined Bell, I had the chance to go overseas with a research firm, but I stayed. Thought it would be better for the family, for you. For your mother. Do you regret it?" Juliet asked. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I also know that choice made me who I am." Juliet folded her hands in her lap. "I'm not sure where I belong anymore. The field still calls to me. But part of me wonders if I've spent so long leading others that I forgot to lead myself." Her father looked at her, truly looked at her, and said, "Maybe leadership isn't always about the field. Maybe it's about where you're needed most." Her mother smiled gently from across the table. "You don't have to rush the decision." Logan nodded. "But whatever you choose, it should be for you. Not for us. Not for tradition. Just you." Juliet breathed in deeply. For so long, she had chased recognition. Now that she had it, she realized it was never the prize she thought it would be. What she wanted, more than anything, was purpose. Not just duty. Not just medals, but meaning. Later that night, she sat at the edge of her hotel bed again, the manila folder open once more. She traced her finger along the words: Operation Briefing, Strategic Command, 6-month deployment, high-level clearance. Then she opened her laptop. A message from Belridge was waiting in her inbox. Subject: Civilian Transition Inquiry, Leadership Role Options. She read it twice, then she closed the folder, not rejecting it, not committing, just breathing. She stared at the ceiling until sleep came. She dreamed of 2 roads, one leading into a vast horizon marked by dust and command tents, the other wound through glass towers and clean conference tables. But in both dreams, she was standing tall. And in both dreams, people were listening when she spoke. 3 days passed, like water running through cupped hands. Juliet tried to hold them, tried to feel every moment. But no matter how still she sat, they slipped away. The hotel room had become her battlefield. Her bed, the war table. Her inbox, the frontline. Each day brought more emails from the Pentagon. Updates. Confirmations. The orders had been finalized. The overseas post was official. Her name had already been assigned. A 6-month operation leading a new coalition intelligence team in Eastern Europe. High stakes, high clearance. A position only offered to the best. She had earned it. All of it. But now, she did not know if she could take it, because Belridge had also responded. Whitmore offered her a permanent transition package, a position on the Executive Strategic Advisory Board, civilian, stateside, leadership-focused. Long-term, the kind of role her father had dreamed for her. Even if he never said it out loud. And somehow, all at once, everything felt like it was happening too late. That evening, she returned to her parents' home, hoping the walls could help her think. Her mother was folding laundry in the den. Her father was in his study. Logan was not there. She wandered into the kitchen, restless, then into the backyard. The wind smelled of fresh soil and something green. She stood on the deck, arms crossed, watching the trees sway. Her father joined her not long after. He stood beside her, saying nothing for a while. Then he asked, "You got your orders, didn't you?" Juliet nodded, double quotes. "When do you leave?" 2 weeks. His shoulders dropped slightly, and the Belridge offer, still open, she said. But they want an answer soon. He was quiet, for a while. Then he said, "I always thought if you left the military, it would be because something broke. But now I see. You've only grown stronger." She looked at him. "Then why do I feel so fractured?" "Because this isn't about duty anymore," he said. "It's about home." Juliet turned away from him. "I don't even know where." That is, he stepped closer. "Maybe it's here. Maybe it's wherever you choose to stop running." She clenched her jaw. "This isn't running. This is what I've trained for. What I've bled for." "I know," he said. "And I would never ask you to give it up." "But you want me to stay," she said, sharper now. He exhaled. "Yes, I do." "I thought you finally saw me," she whispered. "I do," he said softly. "That's why it hurts more now." She blinked, struggling to steady her voice. "You only started believing in me once I stepped into your world. Once Belridge said I was valuable. That's not fair." "No," she said, "but it's true." He did not argue. She looked away again, eyes brimming but not falling. "I didn't come home to choose between 2 versions of myself. I came to figure out who I am when no one's giving orders." "And did you?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes, but the answer scares me." They stood in silence. Then her father said, "You taught me something. That it's possible to carry strength and still need softness. That service isn't just medals. It's sacrifice. And I don't want to be one more thing you lose, because you're serving something bigger." Juliet looked at him, and for the first time, he did not look like a pillar. He looked like a man, a father, someone trying. "I'm not making this decision for you," she said. He nodded. "I know." That night she drove to the training field outside the city. The one where she had once run drills in the rain, boots soaked, lungs burning. It was empty now. Just gravel and wind. She walked the length of the track, remembering every scar. Her phone rang. It was Liz. "You okay?" Liz asked. "No," Juliet said. "But I'm clear." Liz waited. "I'm accepting the deployment," Juliet said. "It's who I am. Not because they told me, because I choose it." "I thought you might." Juliet closed her eyes. "But it means leaving all this. The family, Belridge, whatever this new chapter might have been." Liz was quiet. Then she said, "The people who love you will still be there when you come back." Juliet nodded, but her heart did not feel lighter, because deep down, she knew something would change. She was choosing the world again, choosing service, and this time, it would cost her more than distance. It would cost her the fragile bridge she had just begun to build. The next day, she returned to her father's office at Belridge. He was surprised to see her, but he stood. She handed him an envelope. "My official declination letter," she said, "for the civilian position." He opened it slowly, read the short message, then looked at her. "I understand," he said. "I hope so." He nodded. "Just promise me something." "What?" "Come back." Juliet smiled faintly. "If the world lets me." He reached for her hand. Not a handshake, not an order, just a father's grip. Strong and trembling. "You will always have a place here." He said. She left the building without looking back. The wind outside felt colder now, and in her chest, something pulled tight. Because she knew the hardest part was not the battlefield. It was the goodbye. The news spread through the house before Juliet had even made it back to the hotel. Her father must have told her mother, and her mother must have told Logan. By the time she returned for what she thought would be a quiet final dinner, the energy in the room had shifted. The front door creaked louder than usual. Her mother greeted her with a forced smile. Her father stayed in his study. Logan didn't come out at all. Juliet placed her bag by the door and stood still in the hallway, sensing the tension before a word had been spoken. The house was no longer neutral. It had become a place of unspoken grief. She walked into the kitchen. Her mother was slicing carrots with mechanical precision, her movements sharp and rhythmic. "I guess you made your choice," her mother said without turning around. "I did," Juliet replied. The knife stopped. "You were just starting to come home," her mother said quietly. "And now you're leaving again." "I never promised I was staying." Her mother sighed and put the knife down. "I know. But that doesn't make it easier." Juliet sat at the table. "It wasn't easy for me either." The air between them thickened. Her mother wiped her hands, then turned and looked at her daughter with tired, loving eyes. "I'm proud of what you do," she said. "But I'm also tired of empty chairs, of missed holidays, of watching you walk away before the coffee gets cold." Juliet swallowed. "This isn't forever." "No," her mother said. "But it's still a kind of goodbye." The door opened then, and Logan stepped in. His face was unreadable. He looked from their mother to Juliet, then grabbed a glass of water without a word. Juliet stood. "Can we talk?" He shrugged. "Sure." They stepped out to the backyard, where the sun was sinking behind the fence, casting long shadows across the lawn. Logan crossed his arms. "So that's it?" She nodded. "It's what I've been working toward my whole career," he said. "You were trying to figure out who you are without the uniform." "I did. And the answer was the uniform." Juliet sighed. "No, the answer was service. The answer was knowing that even if I could have something softer here, I would." Still choose the hard thing because it's where I'm meant to be. Logan kicked at a loose stone. You don't think we need you here? I think you'll be fine. He looked up, eyes fierce now. We weren't fine before. We were silent. And now that we've started fixing things, you're walking out. Again, it's not that simple, she said. No, he snapped. It never is. Not with you. That stung. She took a step closer. You think I wanted to leave again? She asked. You think this feels good? He said nothing. I finally felt seen, for the first time. And I wanted to stay in that feeling longer than a week. But this mission, it's not a duty call. It's a calling. Logan looked away. She continued. You have dad. You have mom. You have this life. I don't. Not in the same way. And maybe that's my fault. But I've built something else. Something that matters. I'm not walking away from you. I'm walking toward what I was made for. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, I just wish we had more time. Juliet felt her throat tighten. Me too. Dinner that night was quiet. No jokes, no stories. Just food, passed politely. A strange courtesy had settled over the table. Fragile as glass, her father broke the silence with a toast, his voice low. To Juliet, he said, raising his glass. You make us proud, even when you leave. Juliet nodded. Thank you. Her mother's eyes glistened, but she didn't speak. Logan raised his glass halfway, then set it back down. Later, as Juliet was putting on her coat, her father approached her in the foyer. You'll write? He asked. Always, he nodded. I'll talk to Whitmore. Keep your place warm. She smiled softly. You don't have to do that. I know, but I want to. Her mother hugged her tightly, whispering, be safe, be whole. And then, Logan walked her to the car. The air was cool, the stars beginning to emerge. Don't forget us, he said. I couldn't if I tried. He nodded once, then stepped back. She started the engine. As she drove away, the house grew smaller in her rearview mirror, tucked in darkness, the porch light still glowing, like it was waiting for her return. She didn't cry. She had done that already. But as the road stretched ahead, and the next chapter loomed in the form of flights, orders, and military bases, she whispered to herself, let them remember me. Not for staying, but for standing. Because some families are built at the dinner table, and some are built at the edge of sacrifice. The base in Eastern Europe sat nestled between snow-covered hills and an aging city that still bore the scars of older wars. Juliet arrived under a steel-colored sky, her breath visible in the cold air as she stepped off the transport vehicle. The wind greeted her like an old friend, sharp, honest, and unforgiving. She walked through the gates, wearing her uniform like armor. The soldiers snapped to attention. The flag flapped above the command post. Her boots crunched the gravel, and in her heart, the silence returned, the one that always arrived when she was back where she belonged. But belonging, she was beginning to learn, came with a cost. Her quarters were small but orderly. A single desk, a narrow bed, and a small window that looked out toward the barracks. On that first night, she unpacked in silence. No family photos, no keepsakes. Just a laptop, her orders, and a single worn notebook filled with her own words, written during nights far from home. Command meetings started early. There were threats in the region, intelligence leaks, strange signals, movement across the border that did not match known patterns. Juliet led briefings with her usual focus. She issued tasks, listened closely, and remained sharp. No room for mistakes. No room for anything else, until the third night. She was reading a classified update when her phone vibrated on the desk. She picked it up without hesitation, thinking it was a system alert, but it wasn't. It was Logan. She stared at the screen, then answered. Juliet, he said, his voice strained. It's Mom. Her heart dropped. She collapsed in the kitchen. It was sudden, Dad called the ambulance. She's at St. Margaret's. They're saying it might have been a stroke. Juliet sat down slowly, her hand trembling. Is she conscious? She was, for a bit. But it's complicated. I don't know what's going to happen. I didn't know who else to call. Juliet tried to breathe, tried to think like a soldier, like a colonel. But she was not just a colonel right now. She was a daughter. Have you spoken to Dad? She asked. He's there with her. But he's not okay. Juliet closed her eyes. I'm flying in tomorrow, she said. What? I'll get clearance. I'm coming home. Logan didn't argue. He just said, okay. He hung up. For a moment, the air in the room felt heavier than any weight she had carried in the field. She stood, grabbed her coat, and walked straight to the operations office. Within hours, her emergency leave request was filed. Her second in command, a young major named Evans, took over the briefings. Juliet barely heard the usual objections. From Central Command, she had done enough. She had proven enough. Now, they owed her the dignity of absence by morning. She was on a military flight bound west. The sky changed colors as she flew. Snow to clouds to sunlight. When she landed, Logan was waiting at the base gate. His hug was quick, fierce. She's stable, he said. But they're running more scans. Juliet nodded, already walking toward the car. Let's go. St. Margaret's was quiet when they arrived. Her father sat beside her mother's bed, his hands wrapped around hers, like they were afraid. To let go, Juliet stepped inside. Her mother looked pale, her face still. Tubes and wires surrounded her. She asked for you. Her father said. Juliet reached for her mother's hand. I'm here. Her mother stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering. Open. A faint smile appeared. There's my soldier girl. Juliet's throat tightened. Don't talk. Just rest. Her mother squeezed her hand. You came back. Always, Juliet whispered. I'll always come back. That night, she didn't leave the hospital. She sat by her mother's side until morning. Her father dozed in the corner. Logan paced the hallway like a guard. The world had called her once, and she answered. Now it had called again. And this time, she was not sure where she was needed most. The next afternoon, a message came in from command. Request status update. Immediate return expected within 72 hours. Juliet stared at the screen. She looked at her mother, sleeping. At her father, too tired to stand. At Logan, who now carried the weight of two children's worry. She walked out into the hallway and made the call. Colonel Dane, said the voice on the other end. It's me, Juliet replied. I'm requesting an extension. There was a pause. You know the implications. I do. Another silence. We need your leadership. Juliet looked through the hospital window, at the sky beyond it. I know, but right now, they do too. The hospital room was quiet, except for the soft rhythm of machines and the occasional hush of nurses moving down the hallway. Juliet had never been one to sit still for long, yet now she had no choice. She sat beside her mother's bed, her fingers gently tracing the fabric of the blanket, her mind heavier than it had ever been in a combat zone. Her mother was stable, but weak. The doctors spoke in careful terms. A minor stroke, promising recovery. Time would be the real test. Juliet watched her mother sleep, listened to every breath, and tried not to count the hours she was borrowing from duty. She hadn't told them yet what her decision truly meant. Not her commanders, not her father, not even herself. Outside, the rain had begun to fall. Logan arrived with coffee, his hair damp, his expression drawn. They're pushing, aren't they? He asked. Juliet took the coffee. They always do. You going back? She didn't answer. He sat beside her and waited. I asked for an extension, she said. They approved 3 days. That's all they could give. Logan frowned. 3 days. After that, it's a formal breach. Not dishonorable, but damaging. To your record, to everything. Logan stared ahead. What are you going to do? Juliet looked at her mother. I think I already did it. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. Command. Final reminder. Report or relinquish. She silenced it. Later that evening, her mother woke briefly. Juliet helped her sip water, brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. You didn't have to come, her mother whispered. Yes, I did. Her mother looked at her with eyes that seemed to see too much. You always carry the world. You don't have to carry us, too. Juliet swallowed. You're not a burden. You're home, her mother said. But are you at peace, Juliet? Did not know how to answer that when her mother drifted back to sleep. Juliet walked to the window and stared out into the storm. Her reflection stared back, not in uniform, not behind a podium. Just Juliet, not Colonel Dane. Just a daughter, she. Spent the night in the room, curled on a narrow cot the nurses had rolled in. Her sleep was shallow, full of half-dreams. The next morning, she opened her inbox again. The final message had come. Failure to report will trigger transfer of command. Record to be reviewed for reassignment status. This decision is final. She read it once, then she closed the laptop. She didn't cry, she didn't rage. She simply stood, walked into the hallway, and took a long breath. Her father found her there not long after. He looked worn, his face pale and lined with sleeplessness. You're not going back, are you? He asked. No, Juliet said. He nodded slowly, like he had known all along. I should be furious, he said. Are you? He hesitated. No, I'm scared. For you, for what you're giving up. Juliet looked at him, steady now. I'm not giving it up, I'm giving it back. Just for now. He sat beside her on the bench. She need help when she comes home, he said. Therapy, routines, patience, I know. I don't know how to do any of that. You won't have to do it alone. He looked at her with something, close to awe. You would give up everything for us. I've spent years giving everything to people who needed me. This time, I'm just choosing who I give it to. He reached for her hand. I see you. No uniform, no rank, just you. She closed her eyes. Thank you. The days passed slowly. Her mother improved. The colors returned to her face. Her voice grew stronger. She asked for stories, and Juliet gave them. Not of war, but of childhood, of camping trips and laughter, of the old swing in the backyard, of Logan falling into the lake, of the night Juliet had snuck out to watch the stars. Logan joined them. Each evening her father brought crossword puzzles, and somehow, quietly, a family began to stitch itself together again. On the fourth day, Juliet logged into her military portal. The screen flashed red, position reassigned. File status, pending evaluation. She stared at it for a long time. Then she logged out. That night, she sat alone on the back porch of her parents' home. The sky was clear, and the moon was full. She had not stood still this long in years. The door creaked, and Logan stepped outside. He sat beside her. You good? He asked. No, she said. But I'm okay. He nodded. Double quotes mom, single quotes, asking when you'll move in, he said with a smile. She already cleared out her sewing room. Half of it. He grinned. Juliet chuckled, then looked at her brother. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Logan added, but I'm also glad you're here. Juliet looked out over the yard. She had lost a mission. She had lost a title, but she had gained something deeper. She wasn't standing still. She was finally standing with Dot, and that made all the difference. The house smelled like cinnamon and strong coffee. It was late morning, and sunlight poured through the kitchen windows in warm streaks that painted the floor with gold. Juliet sat at the table with her mother, slicing apples for a pie neither of them had made in years. Her mother's hand still trembled slightly, but the recovery was steady. Her voice stronger now, her eyes clearer. They talked softly as they worked. Not about hospitals or treatments, not about deployment, but about simpler things. About the time Juliet had tried to cut her hair at 7 and ended up looking like a scarecrow. About the terrible meatloaf phase her mother had gone through. About Logan's first heartbreak and how he'd cried behind the garage. Every word stitched another patch into the quilt of their shared history. It had been 3 weeks since Juliet missed her return flight. Her military file now rested in limbo, waiting for review. She hadn't been discharged, but the momentum she once carried like a torch was now a distant flicker. There were no more strategy briefs, no more encrypted emails. And yet, she didn't feel lost, because for the first time in years, she was not running to something. She was standing still. And standing mattered too. That afternoon, she went for a walk through Belridge's downtown. She hadn't been there in years. The shops had changed. The sidewalks had been repaved. But some things stayed the same. The smell of coffee from Parker's Cafe. The bookstore with the crooked awning. The quiet rhythm of life, moving without urgency. As she passed the glass windows of Belridge Defense Headquarters, she saw something that stopped her in her tracks. Her father, standing in the lobby, talking to none other than Whitmore. She ducked into the alley beside the building and pulled out her phone. A moment later, it rang. Juliet Whitmore's voice came warmly through the line. "I saw you," she said. Through the glass, he laughed. "I figured you might be watching." "I'm not ready," she said. "Not to talk career, not yet." "I didn't call to offer you anything," he said gently. "Your father just wanted to update me on your mother's recovery." I listened. Then I asked how you were. He said, and I quote, "She's better than she's ever been." Juliet leaned against the wall, a faint smile forming. "He said that." "He did," she exhaled slowly. "That means more than he knows." Whitmore paused, then added, "When you're ready, Juliet, not as a colonel but as yourself, you have a seat at the table. Not because of your service, but because of your clarity." "Thank you," she said. Then she hung up and continued walking. The sun was beginning to lower by the time she reached the park at the edge of town, the same park where she and Logan had played as kids. She sat on the old swing, the one that still creaked when pushed too high. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life without rank. Not lesser, just different. The next morning, she woke to the sound of her mother humming softly in the kitchen. The smell of pancakes filled the air. Juliet stretched, walked to the living room, and found her father sitting on the couch with an old photo album open in his lap. He looked up and patted the seat beside him. "I was thinking," he said, "maybe it's time we started keeping new records. Not just the old medals and certificates, but the dinners, the birthdays, the quiet days." Juliet sat beside him. "I'd like that," she said. He turned the page. "You know, for all the years I thought I understood success, I missed the parts that mattered." "You didn't miss them," she said. "You just hadn't arrived yet." He nodded slowly. "And now that I'm here, I hope you stay. I'm not sure what staying looks like yet." "That's all right," he said. "You've already come home in ways we never expected." Later that week, Logan showed up at the house with a laptop and 2 coffee mugs. "I have a crazy idea," he said, setting everything down on the kitchen table. Juliet looked up from the stack of folded towels she had been organizing. "Oh no," she said, smiling. "No, seriously," he grinned. "A consulting business, you and me. Civil military training strategies, transition coaching, leadership development, All that stuff they're terrible at teaching, but critical to survival. She blinked. You're serious? I am. You've been leading your whole life. And I've spent years managing people who don't know how to lead themselves. We'd be unstoppable. Juliet sat down, looked at the laptop, at her brother, at the coffee mug with the words "Make it matter" printed across it. I don't know, she said. You don't have to decide today, Logan replied. Just think about it. She did, and by that evening, she had a name in mind. Dane Strategies, built not from rank, but from resilience. On Sunday evening, they had dinner as a family again. The fourth in a row, Juliet cooked. Her mother sat nearby, offering unsolicited, but welcome advice. Her father peeled potatoes without complaining. Logan brought dessert. They gathered around the table, no suits, no uniforms, no speeches, just hands passing bowls, soft laughter, and a quiet grace. Halfway through the meal, her father lifted his glass. To Juliet, he said, his voice steady. Not the colonel, not the consultant, just Juliet, our daughter. Juliet raised her own glass. To all the versions of us we had to become before we found the one that fits. They clinked glasses, and that night, as Juliet stepped out onto the porch under a sky full of stars, she whispered, I was never nothing, I just hadn't been seen. And now, she was truly, completely, finally. And that's how Juliet Dane, once dismissed at her own family's dinner table, proved that true worth doesn't need approval. It simply needs to be seen. She didn't just reclaim her identity as a daughter or a soldier. She found strength in standing still, in choosing presence over position, and in rewriting what success really means. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. Your time and heart matter to this story, and we hope Juliet's journey reminded you that sometimes the quietest victories are the most powerful. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales just like this. And remember, your voice matters. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Until next time, stay strong, stay seen, and never stop writing your own story.